from performative to impactful. The business community is shifting its approach to ESG compliance. I'm talking to ClearView Energy Partners Kevin Book at Xiquet about whether this is the moment for a climate solution. I'm Monica Trousey. This is Off the Menu. Kevin, how
Monica,
are you? It's
wow.
so good to see you.
So good to see you too.
So good to see you.
Forever.
I know, it's been way too long. I mean, we've been having conversations since like 2006, 2007.
Yeah.
We've both been in the climate and energy space for a long time.
Yeah.
And to me, at least, it does feel like we are in a bit of a new era right now. And I'm interested to hear if you think the same. I mean, we're seeing the business community make commitments. We're seeing the government, federal, state, local, taking steps or signaling that they are willing to act. But I'm curious if it's actually the moment, like the moment that we're going to see actual change, the moment when the public and private sectors will kind of come together and create that solution to climate change.
I would love to think that this is the moment, but we're sort of in the middle of an energy transition. We're in an 83% fossil fueled world today, and the gap is enormous. And policy is the thing that closes that gap. Maybe when we look back at this, we won't say this was the moment. There's many more moments to come, and a lot of them not from government, probably from other parties.
One of the things that I've really been looking at a lot is cryptocurrency and all of this attention that we're seeing around the use of fossil fuels with cryptocurrency. Do you think we'll continue to see an evolution in that discussion and this push towards more carbon-free technology being used in crypto mining?
You know, I wish I could know how the crypto story is going to turn out. One thing is really clear. There is an emission signature because it's highly processing intensive to support these blockchain networks. And so, you know, if you look at what that means, there are a lot of people who've been trying to sell power in sort of a flat U.S. market for years, right? They sort of looked optimistically at electric vehicles, but it's a long way off. And they said, well, the load will come. But cryptocurrency, now we're talking about hundreds of terawatt hours a year going to something. But where and which electric mix? If we're going to have global trade regulate climate, then at some point global finance will probably have to regulate the climate implications of crypto finance.
One of the things I'm working on is trying to make sure that all carbon-free technologies like nuclear energy are included in the mix as we look at ESG screens. But do you think that we will get to that place where it's less about the performance and more about the actual substance and having an impact on climate change?
In terms of the ESG, you know, how you define it, well, if there's an E, it can't be the only thing you focus on. The S and the G are going to matter too. And we have some relatively recent vintage examples of low-emitting technologies that have an S problem, right? So the solar panels from the Uyghur Autonomous Region in China and our recent trade response to the perceived or existing forced labor risks. Those are challenges on the S side that can very seriously get in the way of the E. And so, you know, E is just hard enough on its own. When you start setting up these screens, are they going to be absolute? Are they going to be, are they going to be binding? The Securities and Exchange Commission is pursuing two routes. They're looking not just at disclosure, sure, but also defining what this is going to mean. And so that an investor can have a reasonable expectation of what they're getting. I think it's going to matter how you define it. In both cases, it could be done in a way that supports desirable outcomes and efficiency, or it can be done in a way that prescriptively produces an outcome that may not be efficient and may not be desirable. Particularly when it comes to raising money in ESG, there's a huge amount of investment interest, but in what? What is ESG? And so, you know, there's a big distinction I would draw between the idea of disclosure. Like for an investor, the idea of disclosure at its best is a transparency issue. Are you holding on to something that faces physical or financial or climate risk? And if so, what are those risks? You should know. You can address that, right? So disclosure is something that an investor can say, well, I can factor that in. I'll risk adjust the revenue stream, or I'll use a higher discount rate, some way to handle it. But ESG that says in or out is actually an exclusion of investment. It's either a crowding in or a crowding out. And now you're talking about dollars that would have gone to investment that either can't or won't, or otherwise will when they're not making enough change relative to these ambitious targets. For most people, this isn't something where they say, wow, I'm really getting my money's worth on the climate spend. Even if the funds did get ahead of target, the perception may not reflect that, and that could be a different challenge entirely.
Thank you for joining me for lunch today. This was a fun conversation.
Thanks for having me. It's so great to see you, and in person too.